Very good morning to all of you guys. Welcome back after a long weekend. I hope you enjoyed your weekend. Now, in the last session, we finished contract costing. Now, from this session and onwards, for the coming two more sessions, I'll be discussing process costing. A very important chapter, just like contract costing, a very, very important chapter from examination point of view. Examiner do ask questions on this chapter very frequently in exams. So most of, in every attempt, you will see a question of process costing. When talking about the weightage of this chapter, we can say approx 8 to 12 marks is the weightage of this chapter. So in the coming three sessions, I'll be discussing process costing. Apart from this, I'll be discussing many questions, practical questions of process costing. Mostly the questions will be from study material. So let's start, guys, with process costing. Now, what is process costing? See, this method of costing is used by the companies wherein the raw material has to pass through two or more than two processes before being converted into final product. I repeat again, very good morning to all of you. That's really great, Ritika Verma. Same here, Mantanjali. So now, what is process costing? It's a method of costing used by those industries or those companies wherein their raw material has to pass through two or more than two processes before being converted into final product. What is process costing? It's a method of costing used by those companies or manufacturing concerns, we can say, wherein the raw material has to pass through various processes before we can say the raw material has to pass through two or more than two processes before being converted into final product. So what is process costing? It's a method of costing, just like contract costing, wherein it was a method of costing used by the companies who are into construction business. So similarly, this method of costing is used by those companies or manufacturing concerns wherein the raw material, the basic input, the basic raw material has to pass through two or more than two processes before being converted into final product. So let's say this is how the mechanism works, wherein my raw material has to go to a particular process. Let's say process first. The output of process first will be transferred to process second. And the output of process second, if there is no process third, it will be transferred to finished goods. So this is how this mechanism works. So I repeat again, what is process costing? It's a method of costing used by those companies or manufacturing concerns wherein the raw material, the input, has to pass through two or more than two processes before being converted into final product. So let's say my input is my raw material has to pass through process first. The output of process first is passed to process second, and the output of process second is my finished outputs. So if you guys have any doubts until now, you guys can ask me. I repeat again, what is process costing? It's a method of costing used by those companies or manufacturing concern wherein the raw material has to pass through two or more than two processes before being converted into final product. So those who want to copy this part can please copy. Very good morning, Kinjal. Very good morning, Anu Gupta. Now, let's take a practical example. Let's say I do manufacture potato chips from potatoes. I do manufacture potato chips from potatoes. I do procure potatoes directly from the farmers. So my raw material for my final product is potato chips. This is my final product, and my raw material is my potatoes. Now, from converting potato to potato chips, there are various processes that are involved. So let's say I do procure these potatoes directly from farmers. So as and when I receive my input, we can say input or raw material. In this case, it is our potatoes. So let's say the first process is of grading and sorting of potatoes. This is my first process. Process first. Once the grading and sorting is done, the potato chips are prepared, are fried. The potato chips are fried in the next process. So, preparation of potato chips from potatoes. Once the potato chips are prepared, this is my second process. The output of this process is transferred to the next process. Let's say adding flavors and preservatives. So my third process is adding flavors and preservatives. Once the flavors and preservatives are added, let's say they are transferred to the next process wherein they are packed, labeled, they are packed and labeled so that they can be sold in the market. So the next process is packing and labeling. And once it is done, my final product is out. So this is my process 4. So what you can see that in this industry, the product has to pass through various processes. That is, the first process is grading and sorting of potatoes. The second process, we can say preparation of potato chips from the potatoes. Thereafter, once the potato chips are ready, they are transferred to the next process wherein the various flavors are added and preservatives are added. And thereafter, once the final product is ready, they are packed and labeled to make them marketable. So this is how the output of the process 4 is my final product, that is a pack of potato chips. So in this industry, the potatoes, my raw material, my input has to pass through so many processes before being converted into final product. Now, each and every process is different. Process first is different, process second is different, process third is different, and process 4 is different. So each and every process is different and unique. So we will prepare a separate process account for every process. I repeat again, guys, since each and every process is different and unique, so we will prepare a separate process account for every process to record all the expenses that are incurred in a particular process. I'm writing it for your reference also. Since each process is different and unique, so separate process account is to be prepared for every process to account all the expenses pertaining to that process. Very good, Madhuri. Will surely. So as I said, what is process costing? It's a method of costing used by the companies wherein the raw material has to pass through 2 or more than 2 processes before being converted into final product. Since each and every process is unique, therefore a separate process account is to be prepared for every process to record all the record all the expenses pertaining to a particular process. So if you guys have any doubts till now, you guys can ask me, waiting for your queries. Apart from this, there are many more industries, as said by Manthanjali sir. Making of leather shoes includes various processes. Yes, making of leather shoes includes various processes. Further, let's say I'm the manufacturer of shirt. And I do procure cotton directly from the farmers. So again, for the manufacturing the final product, various processes are involved. That is, my input is cotton. So the first process will be conversion of cotton into thread. Thereafter, from thread to fabric, the next process. From fabric to stitching a shirt, again a next process. Thereafter, packing and finishing, again a next process. So this is how, wherein most of the manufacturing concerns use this process costing because their raw material has to pass through various processes before being converted into final product. So if you guys have any doubts, you guys can ask me, waiting for your queries. Those who want to copy this explanation can please copy. Here I have written that since each and every process is different and unique, therefore a separate process account is prepared for each and every process to account all the expenses that are incurred in the process. Please copy this part, guys. Yes, Ayush. Yes, Jaspreet. Yes, Tanishka. Your examples are correct. That is, automobile industries involves many processes. Chemical industries also involves many processes. Apart from this, yes, refining industries also, the crude oil has to go through various processes before being converted into various final products. Yes, well said, Rajiv Kumar Das. That is, in maximum of the industries, they use process costing because various processes are involved for conversion of raw material into final products. Very good morning, Jyoti. I hope I am audible to all. I hope I am audible to all. So I'm sharing the screen. Sharing the PPT. You can download the notes from the portal also. So just take a quick recap what we have discussed till now. 1 second, guys. So as discussed, what is process costing? It's a method of costing used in industries wherein the raw material has to pass through two or more than two processes before being converted into final product. A separate process account for each process is opened and all the expenditures pertaining to a process is charged to process account. Now, this is how the mechanism works, wherein the input or raw material is introduced in process first. The output of process first is transferred to process second. And let's say there are two processes only that are involved. So the output of process second is basically your finished goods. So this is how the mechanism works, wherein the input that is the raw material is introduced in a particular process, let's say process first. The output of process first is transferred to process second. The output of the process second, if there is any process third, then process third, else the output of the process second will be the finished goods. So this is how this mechanism works. Now, as I said, that we have to prepare process account to account all the expenses that are incurred pertaining to a process. So let's see how this process account is prepared. I'm sharing the screen for your reference, wherein there are two process accounts that are prepared, that is process first account and process second account. In debit side, we will account all the expenses that are incurred, that is the material input, labor, other expenses. Guys, ignore abnormal gain, abnormal loss, normal loss. I'll be discussing this part separately. So on the debit side, we will record all the expenses, and on the credit side, whatever the output we have received from the particular process will be recorded. So herein, in this case, the expenditures that are incurred in process first are recorded, and the output of the process first is transferred to process second. So thereafter, when process second account is prepared, the input will be the input from the process first. Further, extra material cost, labor cost, expenses will be incurred to get either the final output or the output of process second will be transferred, which will be transferred to the next process. So this is how the process account is prepared. For your reference, I'm writing it over the board also, wherein we'll be preparing process account. We'll prepare the process account, that is process first account, process second account. Two columns are involved, that is units and amount. On the debit side of a particular process, we will record all the expenses. That is the input. First of all, we'll record the input, or we can say the raw material. Thereafter, various expenses will be recorded, that is labor, other expenses. We will get the final output, that is the output is to be transferred to process second, the number of units and the total amount. We'll be discussing the accounting of normal loss, abnormal loss and abnormal gain separately. When talking about the basic process account, this is how the basic process account is prepared. The output of the process first is transferred to next process, that is process second, wherein we'll receive two inputs from process first, units and amounts. Further, whatever the expenditures that are incurred in a second process will be recorded. Any extra material, if any, further the labor cost, if any, plus the other expenses, if any, will be recorded, and the output of process second is either transferred to finished goods account, or if any new process is involved, then the next process account. So by finished goods. So this is how the basic process account is prepared. Preeti Panchal sir, please make clear the difference between activity-based costing and process costing. I mean, there is no direct connection between activity-based costing and process costing. Activity-based costing is a method of costing wherein we do charge overheads on the basis of activities, whereas process costing is altogether different concept. It's a method of costing wherein it is used by the industries, wherein the raw material has to pass through various processes before being converted into final product. So there is no direct connection between activity-based costing and process costing. I repeat again, activity-based costing is a method of costing. In activity-based costing, what we were doing is whatever the overheads that were incurred to manufacture a product are charged to a product on the basis of activities rather than the traditional system of costing. So now, let's discuss one practical question wherein how the expenses will be recorded. I request you guys to please download the material what I have provided. It is there on the portal. I'm discussing example number 1. Yes, Madhuri, in process first, the raw material is introduced, so inputs or raw material can be used interchangeably. So let's start with example number 1, basic, wherein we'll prepare the basic process account ignoring normal loss, and abnormal gain. The similar question is there in the study material also. So let's start with example number 1. That is the basic questions for accounting the process account. So from the following data, prepare process account indicating the cost of each process and the total cost. The total unit that passed through each processes were 240 for the period. Herein the details are given, that is the particulars, process first, process second, and process third. Indirect expenses amounting to rupees 85,000 may be apportioned on the basis of wages. There is no opening and closing stock. So let's start, guys. Here in this question, no information is given as regards normal loss, and abnormal gain. So let's start, guys, with process first account. Now, guys, the general format is like particulars, units, and amount, particular, units, and amount. But in this question, no information is given as regards normal loss, or abnormal gain. Further, the question is asking us to calculate the cost per unit of each process. So herein, we'll prepare two columns, that is per unit and total. Per unit and total. The total input is of 240 units and the output is also of 240 units. So let's start, guys. So the material that is introduced in the process, that is 1,50,000. Total 240 units are introduced in this first process. So the per unit cost will be how much? 1,50,000 divided by 240, that is 625. To labor, the labor cost is given, that is 80,000. So 80,000 divided by 240, that is 333.33. Further, other expenses are given, that is 26,000. Divided by 240, that is 108.33. Further, in this question, indirect expenses are given, which is distributed in the ratio of direct wages. So indirect expenses are given in the question. That is 85,000, which are distributed in the ratio of wages. The wages given are 80,000, 2 lakh, and 60,000. So 8:20:6. The indirect expenses as given are distributed in the basis on the basis of wages. So the ratio of wages in process first and second and third is 8:20:6. So accordingly, we'll distribute 85,000. That is 20,000 for process first. $50,000 for process second. $15,000 for process third. So two indirect expenses. $20,000 divided by 240, that is 83.33. So these all are the expenses that are incurred in process first account, and the output of process first is transferred to the next process, that is process second. The total cost of process first is 150 plus 80,000 plus 26,000 plus 20,000. So 2,76,000 is the total cost. Since the unit manufacturers were 240, so the total cost is 1150. So this is how the basic process account will be prepared. As discussed in the format also, the format is very simple, wherein on the debit side, we will record all the expenses that are incurred in the process, and on the credit side, the output of the particular process. Similarly, we will prepare process second account. The input of process second will be the output of process first. So to process first, 1150 and 2,76,000. So this will be the input of the process second. Further, the expenditures that are incurred in process second is material is 50,000. Labor is 2 lakh. Other expenses are given, that is 72,000. Further, indirect expenses are also given, that is 50,000. Now we'll calculate the per unit cost, that is divided by 240. So 50,000 divided by 240, that is 208.33. 2 lakh divided by 240, that is 833.33. 72,000 divided by 240, that is 300. And 50,000 divided by 240, that is 208.33. Again, herein 3 processes are involved. So the output of process second is to be transferred to process third. So the total cost is 2,76,000. That is the input received from process first, plus 50,000 plus 2 lakh plus 72,000 plus 50,000. So 6,48,000 is the total cost till date of total cost till process second divided by 240, that is 2,700. So the per unit cost of 240 units till process second is 2,700. Rupesh, Vinod Bhai, Bhimani, as far as normal loss is concerned, I'll be discussing after this question. So have some patience. Very good Hitesh Jain, very good Akash Neel, very good Riya. Very good Manthanjali, very good Hitesh again. Let's prepare the last process account, that is process third account. The output of process second is transferred to process third. So to process second, that is 2,700 per unit and 6,48,000. Further expenses are incurred in process third, that is 20,000 on material. So two material, two labor, that is 60,000. Two other expenses, that is 25,000, and two indirect expenses, $15,000. Now let's calculate the per unit cost. I repeat again, in this question, since no normal loss, abnormal gain is involved, so that's why we haven't prepared the units column. Further, the question is asking us to calculate the per unit cost of each process. That's why we have prepared two columns, that is per unit and amount. So 20,000 divided by 240, that is 83.33. 60,000 divided by 240, that is 250. 25,000 divided by 240, that is 104.167, and 15,000 divided by 240, 62.5. So the output of process third is transferred to finished goods account. Since no more processes are involved, so the final output is our finished goods, and that will be transferred to finished goods account. So the total cost is 6,48,000 plus 20,000 plus 60,000 plus 25,000 plus 15,000. So 7,68,000 is the total cost of 240 units, and the cost per unit will be 3,200. So guys, this is how the basic process accounts is prepared, wherein no information is given in the question as regards normal loss, abnormal loss, and abnormal gain. This question is not important from examination point of view. This is just for your basic understanding how the process accounts are prepared. So if you guys have any doubts till now, you guys can please ask me. Rupesh Vinod by Bimani, yes, the output of a particular process will be the input of the next process. So herein, in this case, let's say it's the same industry, that is of preparation of potato chips, wherein 240 we can say tons of potatoes were introduced. The output of this first process, let's say the first process involved is these potatoes are already sorted and graded. So let's say the process first is what? Preparation of potato chips. So herein the preparation of potato chips is done. Once the potato chips are ready, they will be transferred to the next process, wherein we will add flavors and preservatives. Once the flavored chips are ready, they will be immediately transferred to the next process for packing and grading and labeling. So the output of a particular process will be the input for the next process. Waiting for your queries, guys. See, when talking about Ayush Agarwal sir, here in the, see, let me read the question carefully. See, here in the question is asking that from the following data, prepare process account indicating the cost of each process and the total cost. It means what? So this is the cost of each process, and we have calculated the per unit cost for to present the solution in a more convenient way. From examination point of view, you can directly prepare the total account only. I mean, the total, you can prepare a single column table also, but to present the process in a better way, that is, I mean, how much per unit cost is involved. That's why I have prepared the 2-column table. Yes, Madhuri, it need to be rounded off, my dear. Prabhas Jain, you're talking about, I'll be addressing your query in the later half of the session. So fine, guys, we are done with the basic of process account. That is how process accounts are prepared. Now, let's proceed further, guys. Let's proceed further, guys, with the next part of chapter, that is normal loss. Now, guys, what is normal loss? Very simple, guys. What is normal loss? Due to the nature of production process, it is bound to happen. What is normal loss? It is inherent in nature. Due to the nature of production process, it is bound to happen. So let's say I do manufacture potato chips from potatoes. These potatoes are procured directly from farmers. So now these potatoes are transported from farm to my premise, and during the course of transportation, loading and unloading, due to the nature of potatoes, there are chances that certain percentage of potatoes will be damaged. I repeat again, guys, I am the manufacturer of potato chips from potatoes. These potatoes are procured directly from the farmers. So now these potatoes are transported directly from farm to my premise. So 2 से 3 बार loading होता है, unloading होता है. So during the course of loading and unloading, कुछ percentage potatoes by default खराब होते ही हैं. We can't avoid it. It is the nature of the product. So that is normal loss. Apart from this, let's take one more example wherein I am the manufacturer of wooden furniture. During the course of manufacture of wooden furniture, कुछ percent wood हमारा scrap होता ही है. That is normal loss. Further, let's say I'm the manufacturer, I'm into refining business, wherein I refine crude oil. I do process crude oil and convert them into petrol, diesel, CNG and all. Now, during the course of this processing, certain percentage of the oil is evaporated. I can't avoid it because it is the nature of the product. So this is normal loss. So very simple, guys. What is normal loss? Due to the nature of the product, this loss is bound to happen. It is inherent in nature. That is normal loss. We can't avoid it. We can't avoid normal loss. It is bound to happen. Let's say I'm the manufacturer of shirt. Now, during the course of manufacture of shirt, certain percentage of fabric is scrapped. इट इज द नेचर ऑफ द प्रोडक्ट. बिना वो फैब्रिक हटाए हमारा नया शर्ट मैन्युफैक्चर ही नहीं हो सकता. सो दैट इज नॉर्मल लॉस. सो व्हाट इज नॉर्मल लॉस? Very simple. It is inherent in nature and it is bound to happen. Inherent in nature, unavoidable. The nature of product is such like it cannot be avoided. So we can say inherent in nature, unavoidable, and yes, on the basis of past experiences, it can be predicted well in advance. सीधी और आसान भाषा में अगर मुझे ये शर्ट बनाना है तो I need 1.60 meters of fabric. उसमें से certain percentage is scrap. So I can estimate well in advance that this much percentage will be scrap. So we can say this can be estimated. So on the basis of past experiences, this normal loss can be estimated well in advance. So I repeat again, let's conclude what is normal loss? Inherent in nature. It is bound to happen because of the nature of the product. Second thing is, and it is unavoidable. Can be estimated well in advance. Well said, Surya. Normal losses are expected and abnormal loss are unexpected. Very true, Madhuri. Normal loss is unavoidable. Tirumala Kohli, indirect expenses, how you did? My dear Tirumala, where were you when I was discussing the question? For your reference, I am repeating again, this indirect expenses in the previous question, that is 85,000, are distributed in the ratio of direct wages. The direct wages were 80,000, 2 lakh and 60,000. So they were distributed in the ratio of 8:20:6. So normal loss, very simple guys, inherent in nature due to the nature of the product, unavoidable, we cannot avoid it. It can be predicted well in advance depending upon the past experiences and past data. So now, that is the meaning of normal loss. What about the treatment of abnormal loss? What about the treatment of abnormal loss? Normal loss क्या होता है? We have discussed. Now अब हो रहा है, तो what will be the treatment of the normal loss? Very simple, guys. As said in the PPT also, I have mentioned this part in the PPT also. That is, the cost of normal loss is absorbed by the good units. The cost of normal loss is absorbed by good units. The cost of normal loss is absorbed by good units. Further, if any scrap value is realized, let's say during the course of unloading and loading, certain potatoes were damaged and they were sold in the market at a throwaway prices. So the amount realized on sale of these scrap or normal loss will be deducted from the total cost of the product. So any scrap value, if realized on sale, will be deducted from the total cost of it. Let's say I am the manufacturer of shirts. शर्ट से जो थोड़ा बहुत फैब्रिक बचा, I started manufacturing masks, and these masks were sold in the market. So it means what? Whatever the scrap value that is realized on sale of mask will be deducted from the total cost of the shirts. Isha, I'll be discussing abnormal loss separately. No. Sushil Kumar Bank, no, the normal loss is no need to be valued. Yes, Shivani, normal loss is uncontrollable. We cannot avoid it. Anyways, uncontrollable or unavoidable can be used interchangeably. So, what is normal loss? Very simple, inherent in nature, unavoidable, can be predicted well in advance. When talking about what will be the treatment of normal loss, I'll be discussing this part practically also. Don't worry, guys. The cost of the normal loss is absorbed by good units, that is the remaining units. Further, if any scrap value is realized on sale of normal loss, it will be deducted from the cost of the product. So those who want to copy this part can please copy. When talking about breakdown of machine, it's an abnormal loss. Further, it is more like an idle time for the workers rather than it is nothing to do with material. It is more or less like abnormal idle time. Any doubts, guys? Those who want to copy this part can please copy. Yes, Rajiv Kumar Das, don't worry. Now, how it works, let's say my input is of 10,000 units. I'm discussing normal loss with the help of an example, that is the treatment of normal loss with the help of an example. So let's say I made an input of 10,000 units, and let's say the cost is 1 lakh rupees. I made an input of 10,000 units. Let's say the cost is 1,20,000 rupees. The cost is 1,20,000 rupees. Now, assuming if there is no normal loss, if there is no normal loss, let's take the first situation where there is no normal loss. Very simple. The cost per unit will be how much? Cost per unit will be how much? 1,20,000 divided by 10,000. So the cost per unit will be rupees 12. If there is no normal loss, the cost per unit will be rupees 12. Now, let's say it is given that the normal loss as expected will be, as predicted, will be 10%. The normal loss is given in the question that it is bound to happen, that is 10% of the input. Now, so my final output will be how much? 9,000 units. My final output will be how much? 9,000 units. Now, how to calculate the total cost? Very simple, guys. $1,20,000 divided by 9,000. The cost per unit will be rupees 13.33. The cost per unit will be 13.33. Now, what is the logic behind? What is the logic behind this working, that why normal loss is absorbed by good unit? Very simple, guys. Now see, I have made an input of 10,000 units and my cost was 1,20,000. Now there is a normal loss of 1000 and my output is 9000. It means what? We can say that whatever the cost which was earlier being absorbed by 10,000 units will be now absorbed by 9,000 units, because we have predicted well in advance that by making an input of 10,000 units, we will be getting an output of 9,000 units only. So the cost that was supposed to be absorbed by 10,000 units is now absorbed by 9,000 units. सीधी और आसान भाषा में कि भाई 1,20,000 रुपीस जो खर्चा 10,000 यूनिट्स पे आता था, अब वो 9,000 यूनिट्स पे आएगा, क्योंकि मैनेजमेंट हैज प्रेडिक्टेड वेल इन एडवांस that if we are making an input of 10,000 units, we will be getting an output of 9,000 units. So, I repeat again guys, सीधी और आसान भाषा में वो 1,20,000 जो टोटल कॉस्ट था वो 10,000 यूनिट्स पे इनकर हो रहा था. Now it will be absorbed by 9,000 units. So this is that is why the cost of due to this 1,000 units normal loss, the cost is inflated by 1 rupees and 33 paisa. Further, let's take one more situation wherein the scrap value is realized at the rate of rupees 2 per unit. What if in case any scrap value is realized, then what will be the treatment? Very simple. हमारा total cost कितना है? 1,20,000. The third situation when scrap value is realized. How much is our total cost? 1,20,000. But again we are realizing something on sale of scrap. How much is our normal loss? 1,000 units, and the amount realized is into 2. So 2,000 divided by effective 9,000 units that we are manufacturing. So 1,20,000 minus 2,000 divided by 9,000. So you'll get 13.1. So ये जो scrap value realize होती है, it is a profit to us, or we can say it is a saving in total cost. So wherein earlier we were incurring 1,20,000, the total cost. Further, in this case, we are realizing certain amount on sale of scrap. So that's why we can say that it is a saving in cost. So accordingly, our total cost will be reduced to 1,18,000 divided by the effective units, that is 9,000 units. So if you guys have any doubts in this normal loss part, you guys can please ask me. Waiting for your queries, guys. Yes, Ankur Patel, in simple language, वो cost जो 1,20,000 units absorb कर रहे थे, now this 1,20,000 cost is absorbed by the balance unit, that is 9,000 units. So वो cost जो 10,000 units पे incur हो रही थी, now it will be incurred on 9,000. That's why we can say that the value of normal loss is absorbed by good units. Any doubts, any queries, any confusion? If there is no normal loss, very simple, the cost will be how much? 1,20,000 divided by 10,000. But if there is a normal loss without scrap value, what will be the cost? जो cost 10,000 units पे लग रहा था, similar cost is charged on 9,000 units. That is 1,20,000 divided by 9,000, 13.33. Similarly, if any scrap value is realized, we can say that it is a saving in our total cost. Further, our total cost will be reduced by 2,000. So 1,20,000 minus 2,000, that is 1,18,000 divided by 9,000 units. How come 9,000? Very simple. 10,000 minus 1,000. Rutvik, see, very simple, guys. The total cost that is incurred is 1,20,000. The total input that was made at the beginning of the year was 10,000. However, management has predicted well in advance that there will be a loss of 10% on inputs, and our final output that we are going to get is 9,000 units only. But when talking about the normal loss of 1,000 units, if they are sold in the market, whatever the scrap value will be realized will be deducted from the total cost, because anyways here we are reducing the units also. So on the sale of these units, if any amount is realized, that need to be reduced from the total cost. So 1,20,000 the total cost minus the scrap value divided by inputs minus the normal loss. That is the formula of calculation of cost per unit. When talking about how come I got this output of 9,000, very simple, 10,000 was my input, 1,000 was my normal loss. So this is how I got an output of 9,000 units. When talking about how come I got this 2,000, very simple, my normal loss is of how many units? 1,000 units. And the scrap value is realized at the rate of rupees 2 per unit. So at the rate 2, so this is how I got 2,000. So when talking about the cost of output, in the first case, when there is no normal loss, it will be rupees 12 per unit. If there is any normal loss without scrap value, it will be 1,20,000 divided by 9,000, 13.33. But however, if any scrap value is realized on sale of normal loss, then my final output price will be 13.11. Manthanjali, scrap value is realized at the rate of rupees 2 per unit. So there is a normal loss of 1,000 units into 2, that is 2,000. This is how I got the scrap value. Thank you so much, Vanati. Shivani, hopefully your query is resolved. Rutvik, hopefully your doubt is resolved. Archie Gupta. Anyone else having any doubts can please ask me. Waiting for your queries, guys. Those who want to copy this explanation can please copy. The question is, the input is 10,000 units and the total amount is 1,20,000. Normal loss 10% of inputs. So my output will be how much? 9,000 units. That is 10,000 minus 1,000, 9,000. In this question, it is given scrap value is realized at the rate of 2 per unit. I have taken 3 situations. If there is no normal loss, the final output value will be 12. If there is a normal loss with no scrap value, my cost will be inflated by 1 rupees 33 paisa. So the total cost will be 13.33. If any scrap value is realized, it will be deducted from the total cost. So herein, from 1,20,000, I have deducted the scrap value that is realized on sale of 1,000 units. So this is how the 2,000, this is how we have calculated the cost per unit if there is a scrap value. Rajiv Kumar Das, in each and every industry, there is certain percentage of normal loss. When talking about food and beverage industry, yes, since the nature of the products are perishable, so again, there is some percentage of normal loss. Apart from this, when talking about the furniture industry, yes, there are some percentage of normal loss involved. Further, when talking about textiles and all these industries, again, certain percentage normal loss is always involved. So in short, in more or less each and every industry, there is certain percentage of normal loss. Thank you so much, Siddhappa. So guys, this is all what about concept of normal loss. Let's brief it. Let's take a quick recap what we have discussed. First point, it is inherent in nature. It is bound to happen, unavoidable. It can be predicted well in advance depending upon our past experiences. When talking about what is the treatment of normal loss, very simple guys. The value of normal loss is absorbed by good units. कैसे absorbed by good units? कि भाई जो खर्चा 10,000 units पे हो रहा है, that is whatever the cost, that is 1,20,000 that is incurred on 10,000 units will now be charged on the balance units, that is 9,000 units. So that's why we can say the value of normal loss is absorbed by good units. Apart from this, when talking about if any scrap value is realized on sale of normal loss, it will be deducted from the total cost. So this is all what about normal loss. So now let's take a practical question. The question is in the material what I have provided. Further, for your convenience, I have further mentioned in the PPT also what is the meaning and treatment of the normal loss. So let's discuss example number 2 of the material what I have provided. I'll be preparing process account, and further how normal loss will be accounted in the process I'll be discussing. So I'm discussing example number 2 of the material what I have provided. It's a very small example, just for your concept, just for your clarity of concepts. So let's start, guys. Example number 2 of the material what I have provided. Herein, the material introduced in a particular process is 1,000 units at the rate 100 rupees per unit. So the total cost of material is 1 lakh. Labor cost is 1,50,000. Other expenses are 50,000. Scrap value realized is also given, that is 12,000. Normal loss is 10% of the input. Prepare process account and calculate the cost of good units transferred. So let's start, guys. A very simple question. I'm discussing example number 2. So here is an input of material of 1,000 units at the rate 100 per unit. So this is how we'll get 1 lakh rupees. One lakh 50,000. Two other expenses. That is 50,000. So now in this question, the total cost incurred in that process is how much? 1 lakh plus 150 plus 50. So that is 3 lakh. Now it is given in the question that 10% is the normal loss. So now the normal loss will be shown on the credit side of process account, that is by normal loss. Out of these 1,000 units, 100 is the normal loss, that is 10% of 1,000. So how much will be the balance amount? 900 units. By process second, only 900 units, that is the output of the process first, will be transferred. Further, it is given that the scrap value realized is 12,000 on these 100 rupees. So 12,000 is the scrap value. So now we can say the total cost that is incurred is how much? 3 lakh. How much is the total cost that is incurred? Very simple, 3 lakh. Out of this 3 lakh, we are realizing 12,000 on sale of scrap. So how much is the total cost now? Very simple, guys. 3 lakh is the total cost that is incurred. Further, we have realized 12,000 on sale of scrap, so it will be deducted. So thereby our total cost will be how much? 2,88,000. When talking about input, the input made were 1,000 units. 100 unit was the normal loss. So my final output is how much? 900 units. So we can easily calculate the cost per unit of the good units. That is 2,88,000 divided by 900 units. That is rupees 320 per unit. So this is how the process account is prepared if in case normal loss is involved. Further, as I said in the earlier question, there was no normal and abnormal loss. So that's why we didn't actually consider the units column. But herein, since the normal loss is involved, so we have to prepare a 2-column table on each side wherein units and total amount. So this is how the normal loss is accounted. That is the total cost minus the scrap value 12,000 divided by 900 units. That is the input minus the normal loss. If you guys have any doubts, you guys can ask me. Waiting for your queries. This is how the normal loss, if given in question, will be presented in the process account. Very good, Hitesh Jain. Pooja, sometimes the roadside stall wala do purchase these perishable products for preparation of some juices or something like that. So if you guys have any doubts, you guys can ask me, else I'll start with the abnormal loss and abnormal gain concept. Those who want to copy this explanation can please copy. Rajiv Kumar Das, it is given in the question that is scrap value realized is 12,000. So that's why I have taken the scrap value 12,000 here. Anyone else having any queries? Waiting for your queries, guys. Ankur Patel, this is units. This is the units value. And this is the amount. I repeat again, guys, please download the material what I have provided. It is given in the question that is a scrap value realized is 12,000. That's why I have taken 12,000. Yes, Preeti, the normal loss will inflate or increase the final cost per unit. Ayush Agrawal, 12,000 is the scrap value that is given in the question, my dear. No, Pooja, you have to clearly write by normal loss rather than scrap value realized. Anyone else having any doubts? See, Rajiv Kumar Das, herein the scrap value is realized. The name itself says scrap value is realized only on sale of scrap. So when talking about the scrap in this question, the scrap is of 100 units. So that's why I have taken 12,000 as the value of normal loss. Sorry, the 12,000 is the scrap value of the normal loss units. Hopefully, Rajiv Kumar, your doubt is resolved. Anyone else? Mantanjali, Akash Neel, Ankur Patel, Hitesh Jain, Vanati, Vikas Bansal, Siddhappa. Any doubts, guys? When talking about why we are writing normal loss, because the normal loss, why we are writing normal loss, because the scrap value is realized on normal loss units. That's why we are writing by normal loss the number of units that are actually the normal loss, and 12,000 is the scrap value that is realized on sale of normal loss units. No, Prabhas Jain, if in question the scrap value is not given, I repeat again, if in question, if in a particular question, no scrap value is given, then very simple, you have to write nil. That's it. So if in question the scrap value or value realized on sale of scrap is not given, simply take 0. But herein in this question, the scrap value is given, that is 12,000. So that's why I have taken 12,000. I repeat again, guys, if no information is given in question as regards the scrap value realized, simply take it nil. That's it. I'm not getting what you are saying, Rupesh. Yes, Preeti. So this is all what about normal loss. So guys, we are done with normal loss now. Now let's start with the next part of the chapter, that is abnormal loss. Now, what is abnormal loss? One second, guys. Now, let's start with the next part of the chapter, that is abnormal loss. Now, guys, what is abnormal loss? Loss in excess of the predetermined loss is abnormal loss. I repeat again, what is abnormal loss? Loss in excess of predetermined loss or loss in excess of normal loss is abnormal loss. Let's say my input was of 10,000 units. As predicted by management well in advance, that there will be a normal loss on input, that is 10%. So, as predicted by the management, normal loss will be 10% of input. So that is 1,000 units will be my normal loss. This was predicted by well in advance by management that there will be a normal loss of 10% of input, that is 1,000 units. So how much was my expected output? My expected output was of 9,000 units. This was predicted well in advance by the management. But when the actual production was done, my actual production was, let's say, 8,700 units only. It means 300 extra units were lost in the process. So this 300 units, which is not predicted by the management well in advance, is what? My abnormal loss. So I repeat again, 10,000 was my input. I was predicting an output of 9,000 units. So I was predicting a loss of 1,000 units. However, when my actual figures were out, instead of 9,000, the only 8,700 units were received. It means what? There was an extra loss of 300 units. So this extra loss of 300 units is what? My abnormal loss. So herein, I repeat again, there was an input of 10,000 units. The management has predicted well in advance that there will be a loss of 1,000 units. So we were expecting an output of 9,000 units. But when the actual output was ready with us, it was only 8,700 units. So the extra loss of 300 units is what? My abnormal loss. So what is abnormal loss? Loss in excess of predetermined loss or loss in excess of normal loss is abnormal loss. Or in other language, we can say if our actual output is less than the estimated output, it is abnormal loss. Now, why abnormal loss why abnormal loss occurs? The only reason is it is due to carelessness of workers or due to bad plant design, abnormal loss may occur. So when talking about abnormal loss, loss in excess of predetermined loss is abnormal loss. Why? क्यों होता है abnormal loss? Very simple. Due to carelessness of workers or due to bad plant design or due to abnormal reasons. Can it be avoided? Yes, it can be avoided. If proper care is taken, if suitable measures are taken, it can be avoided. So can be avoided if when talking about abnormal loss, let's say I do manufacture potato chips from potatoes and I procure these potatoes directly from farmers. Now, during the course of transit from the farmland to my premise, let's say a truck carrying, let's say 35 tons of potato met an accident, and in that accident all the potatoes were damaged. So this is what we call it as abnormal loss. If you guys have any doubts in this part, that is what is abnormal loss, you guys can ask me. I repeat again, what is abnormal loss? Loss in excess of predetermined loss is abnormal loss. Or we can say when the actual output is less than what we were expecting, it is abnormal loss. Why? It may occur due to some abnormal reasons, that is theft or accident or something like that. Apart from this, it may be due to bad plant design or may be due to carelessness of workers. Yes, it can be avoided if suitable measures are taken or proper care is taken. Proper care is taken. So this is all what about abnormal loss, meaning if you guys have any doubts, you guys can ask me. Thank you so much, Satyam. So loss in excess of predetermined loss is abnormal loss. It may occur due to carelessness of worker, due to bad plant design, and other abnormal reasons can be avoided. It is avoidable. If suitable measures are taken, it can be avoided. Mr. Rajiv Kumar Das, hopefully your doubt is resolved relating to the previous question. If you have any doubts in abnormal loss, you can ask me. Yes, Ankur, well said. Yes, Hitesh, perfect. Yes, Poonam, perfect. Yes, Rohit. Yes, Satyam, we can. It's a part of costing P&L account, Preeti Panchal. Anyways, abnormal loss will be transferred to costing P&L. So the accounting for so and so will be done in costing P&L account. I just don't want to create confusion in the class. So when talking about your query, it will be a part of costing P&L account. But yes, when abnormal loss occurs, it will be transferred to costing P&L account, Preeti. Rajiv Kumar Das, any other doubts? Rajiv? Thank you so much, Sushil. I'll be discussing the treatment also, Vanati. So now, when talking about the treatment of abnormal loss, very simple. Value of abnormal loss will be equal to value of good units the abnormal loss is to be, okay, the value of abnormal loss will be equal to the value of good units. Further, abnormal loss will be shown in credit side of process account and thereafter transferred to costing P&L. So value of abnormal loss will be equal to the value of good units. Due to abnormal loss, the product cost will not be inflated. Whatever the proportionate cost that is apportioned to abnormal loss units will be transferred directly to the P&L account, costing P&L account. It will be first transferred to the process account credit side and thereafter it will be transferred to the costing P&L. So this is what the treatment of abnormal loss is. I repeat again, what is abnormal loss? It is avoidable. It cannot be predicted in advance. It can be avoided if proper care is taken of. Further, when talking about the treatment, yes, the value of abnormal loss will be equal to the value of good units. Further, abnormal loss will be shown in credit side of process account. Further, it will be transferred to costing P&L. It is an abnormal loss, Surya. Here in the PPT also, as I've mentioned, what is the meaning of abnormal loss? That is loss in excess of predetermined loss or normal loss is abnormal loss, cannot be estimated in advance, occurs due to carelessness of worker or a bad plant design or operation or sabotage, etc., can be kept under control by taking suitable measures. When talking about treatment, cost of an abnormal process loss is equals to the cost of good units. The total cost of abnormal process loss is credited to the process account from which it arises, and then it is transferred to costing P&L account. So I request you guys to please refer the PPT wherein I have mentioned what is the meaning and what is the treatment of abnormal loss. And further, those who want to copy the explanation as given in the board can please copy. It's a normal loss, but if it is for a longer period of time, Madhuri, it is an abnormal loss. Yes, because Bansal, the input cost will be inflated. Kaveri, can you please elaborate what you are asking for? Manthanjali, please Google it. It's a simple English. So guys, we are done with the meaning and treatment of abnormal loss. I'll be discussing one question on abnormal loss also separately. So let's take a break of 10 minutes and then we'll start with the question on abnormal loss. Admin sir, are you there? Welcome back, guys. After a refreshing break. So before the break, we were discussing what is the abnormal loss, what's the treatment of abnormal loss. So now let's proceed further and let's start with the question. 1 second. So let's start with example number 3 of the material what I have provided. The similar question is there in the study material also. So let's start, guys. Example number 3, abnormal loss and abnormal gain. So a product passes through two processes, that is process first and process second. Material issued to process first is 5,000 units at the rate 8 per unit, that is 40,000. Wages paid is 30,000. Manufacturing overheads are 27,000. Normal loss anticipated was 5% of the inputs. Further, 4,550 units of output were produced and transferred out from process first. The scrap value has been realized at the rate of rupees 2 per unit. You are required to prepare process first account, value of abnormal loss, abnormal loss and abnormal gain account, and units transferred to the next process. So let's start with example number 3, guys. Similar question is there in the material also. Example number 3. So let's prepare the process account. Herein I'll be discussing the points separately for abnormal loss and abnormal gain. There is second question also in this question, wherein if the output is 450 units, what will be the treatment? So let's discuss this question from the perspective of 4,550 units if the output received is 4,550 units. And in the second question, we'll be discussing what if in case the output is 4,850 units. So let's start, guys, with the process account. Here in the material issued is 5,000 units at the rate 8 per unit. So that is 40,000 rupees. The wages paid is 30,000. Manufacturing overheads are given, that is 27,000. The normal loss is anticipated, that is 5% of input. That is 250 units. Now, guys, our input is 5,000. Our normal loss is 250 units. It means our expected output was 4750. This was our expected output. However, in the first scenario, our output is how much? 4,550 units. It means what? Our expected output is much more than the actual output. The actual output is less than expected output. So where these 200 units are gone, these 200 units are basically your abnormal loss. I repeat again, guys, the input was of 5,000 units. The normal loss is 5% of input. It means we were expecting an output of 4750 units. However, when the actual output was ready, it was only 4,550 units. So 200 units, that is an extra loss over and above normal loss, is what? My abnormal loss. How many units? 200 units. And the output that is to be transferred to next process is given in the question, that is 4,550 units. Further, it is given that the scrap value has been realized at the rate of rupees 2 per unit. So the scrap value realized is rupees 500. Now the question is, what will be the value of abnormal loss and what will be the value of good units? That is what we need to find out. If you guys have any queries till now, you guys can ask me. That is the only reason why we are transferring it to costing P&L account, Yogita. Mantanjali and Rekha, when talking about the meaning of sabotage, it is purposely damaging or destructing of particular inputs or products, whatever it is. So now let's proceed further, that what will be the value of abnormal loss and what will be the value of units that are transferred to the next process. Very simple, guys. How much is the total cost that is incurred? 40 plus 30 plus 27. So it will be 97,000 is the total cost that is incurred. Against this, there is a recovery made of rupees 500. As I told you, that normal loss, the value of normal loss is absorbed by good units. But when talking about abnormal loss, it is not absorbed by good units. Due to abnormal loss, the product cost cannot be inflated. It can be inflated only because of normal loss. So my input is 5,000 and my normal loss is 250 units. I repeat again, when talking about abnormal loss, we cannot inflate the price of the product because of abnormal loss. But yes, the price will be inflated if there is a normal loss. So that's why my total cost is 96,500 divided by 4750 units. Few students might, कुछ students की doubt रहेगा कि sir, why you have not deducted 200? Because if we deduct 200, the product cost will be inflated more. That's why we have ignored 200 units. Further, the cost is only calculated on expected production, or expected production is 4750. अगर हम लोग 200 यूनिट्स लेस कर देते तो क्या होता, प्रोडक्ट का कॉस्ट और ज्यादा इन्फ्लेट हो जाता, एंड इट इज नॉट द करेक्ट ट्रीटमेंट. सो हियर इन द करेक्ट ट्रीटमेंट इज 97,000, the cost that is incurred till date minus 500 rupees, that is the scrap value realized divided by the expected or estimated production, that is 4750. So the cost of good unit will be how much? 96,500 divided by 4750, that is 20.316. So this will be the cost of good units. So this will be 4063, that is 200 into, and then This is how we have to account abnormal loss in process account. If you guys have any doubts, you guys can ask me. Very good, Vikas Bansal. Very good, Hitesh Jain. Yes, scrap value will always be given in the question. If scrap value is not given in the question, then we have to take it nil. That's it. Very good, Hitesh. Yes, Vanati, it cannot be absorbed by good units. Anyone else having any doubts, waiting for your queries? The process is very simple. Just calculate the total cost minus the scrap value. Realize we will get the net total cost divided by our expected output. That is the input minus the normal loss. Why we are deducting normal loss? Because yes, if there is any normal loss, it will be absorbed by good units. But when talking about abnormal loss, yes, the abnormal loss will not be absorbed by good units, and the product cost will not be inflated because of abnormal loss. Rekha, I'll be discussing this part now, so just have some patience, my dear. So this calculation is nothing but apportionment of total cost among abnormal loss and the units that are transferred to the next process. So see guys, our total cost is how much? Very simple, that is 97,000 minus 500, that is 96,500. It has been apportioned to how many units? 200 units that are abnormal loss and 4,550 units that are transferred to next process. एकदम सिंपल कैलकुलेशन अगर समझे तो कुछ भी नहीं, कुछ नया कुछ नहीं हो रहा है. वेरी सिंपल. द टोटल कॉस्ट इज 96,500. वो प्रोपोर्शनेट कॉस्ट जो अबनॉर्मल लॉस को अलोकेट होती है, इट विल बी ट्रांसफर्ड टू कॉस्टिंग P&L, and the proportionate cost that is allocated to the output is to be transferred to the next process. So this is how 4063 and 92,437. That is to be transferred to costing P&L further, and this is to be transferred to next process. This is how it works. So when talking about abnormal loss, we'll prepare abnormal loss account also. So herein by abnormal loss, so it will be two process account, that is 200 units, 4063. Now very important guys, since there is an abnormal loss of 200 units, so it will be assumed that these are also sold in the market at the rate of ₹2 per unit. So we will assume that just like the normal loss, the normal scrap is sold in the market at the rate of ₹2 per unit. So these 200 units we will assume is sold in the market at the rate of ₹2 per unit, that is 400, and the balance amount that is left out is to be transferred to costing P&L, assuming it is a loss. So by costing P&L, the balance amount, that is 4063 minus 400, so that will be 3663. This part, assuming these units are also sold as scrap in the market, just like normal loss. So I hope Rekha, your query is resolved. Very good, Vikas Bansal. So now, when talking about abnormal loss account, very simple, guys. To process account 200-4063. Assuming these 200 units are scrapped in the market and the scrap value realized is rupees 2 per unit. So 200 into 2, 400 rupees, and the balance amount, that is our actual loss, is to be transferred to costing P&L. So this is all what about abnormal loss, guys. If you guys have any doubts, can ask me. Waiting for your queries. Very good, Hitesh. Rajiv Kumar Das, any doubts? Mantanjali, any doubts? Kaveri, any doubts? Poonam Sharma. Hitesh Jain, very good. Vikas Bansal, any doubts? Waiting for your queries. This is all what about abnormal loss. I request you guys to please copy this presentation. Please. That's a great compliment. Thank you so much, Rajiv Kumar Das. I am a practicing CA. Mantanjali, any doubts? Poonam, Shivani, Yogita, Kaveri, Rekha. Rekha, hopefully your doubt is resolved relating to what about the scrap value of these abnormal loss units? Tanishka, very good morning. I think this is your first query. I mean, this is your first comment. Shivam, see, these 200 units are scrapped, so we will assume that they are also sold in the market. So, I mean, whether it is normal loss or abnormal loss, if there are units that are scrap or if there is any waste of unit, we will by default assume that if it can be sold in the market, it would have been sold. That's why. Pooja, I haven't received any query of yours. Can you please repost your query, Pooja Sinha? No, Rekha, no need to write the assumption. I have just written it for your reference only. No worries, Tanishka. Can you please repost your queries or questions if you have, Pooja Sinha? Shivam, since the question is silent, so we have assumed that it can be sold in the market. If there is any theft of material, then assuming that if there is any theft of material, it will be clearly given in the question. No need to write, Rekha. Yes, if it is not, if the question is silent and it is not given, then we will take the same scrap value that is there for the normal loss. We do prepare process account also, normal loss account also, abnormal loss account also. So we have to prepare all the accounts. Pooja Sinha, can you please repost your question? Thank you so much, Mantanjali. Thank you so much, Rekha. Thank you so much, Vikas. No need to, in fact, just thoroughly listen to all the sessions that are conducted by ICI. It is more than sufficient. Plus, solve all the questions of study material and practice manual. You can request ICAI for further query session also. They will surely provide you. These sessions are conducted for the benefit of the students only, so that at least they can score good marks. So no need for any other coaching. If you thoroughly attend all the sessions that are being conducted by ICI, it is more than sufficient, because Rajiv Kumar Das, the scrap value realized will be closed with bank account. So here in buy bank 200, 400, I'll be discussing normal loss account also. Don't worry, my dear. Yes, Shivam Singh, well said. It will be transferred. The entire amount will be transferred to costing P&L, my dear. Rupesh Bhimani, you have to look into the reasons, that whether it is due to a normal reasons or normal reasons. It has nothing to do with process costing. Process costing gets over once the manufacture is over. When talking about the sale of product, it is after the manufacturing is done. So once the manufacturing process completes, then we talk about the selling of the product. So we are discussing in this chapter only relating to manufacture of a product. I'm really sorry, Tanishka. We'll surely try to address all your queries and will surely respond to all your comments, my dear. In this session, I think there were no comments received from your end. That's why I said very good morning. I'm not sure, Siddhappa. So guys, now without wasting time, let's move towards the next part of chapter. We have discussed normal loss. We have discussed abnormal loss. Now let's proceed with the abnormal gain, and then we will start with the full-fledged question, because the concept part will be all over. So let's start with one question on abnormal gain. So let's start, guys. The same question I am discussing, example number 3. Siddhappa, I'm really sorry, won't be able to, because it has already been discussed by some other faculty. So I'm really sorry, Siddhappa. If you have any queries, you can post it to ICA. I will surely get the reply. We'll surely try to keep a revision session for a quick query session, 1 or 2 query session at the end of all the chapters. Tanishka, don't worry. I'll speak to the concerned person and will surely try to keep 1 or 2 query sessions so that I can discuss the last part of material. Apart from this, I'll discuss few points on job costing, and if anything is left out in the coming session, we'll try to complete in the query session. Don't worry, Tanishka. Jayanti, I have not received any of your questions or answers. Can you please repost your query, Jayanti? So let's start, guys, with the abnormal gain. The same question, wherein the material is 40,000, wages is 30,000, manufacturing overheads are 27,000. When talking about normal loss, it is given in the question. That is 5% of input, that is 250 units, and the total amount is 500, that is the total scrap value realized. Sorry. I was in a bit of rush. I need to discuss the concepts of abnormal gain first, and then we will start with the questions. So, abnormal loss is all over. Now let's start with abnormal gain. So now, guys, what is abnormal gain? Very simple. When the actual output exceeds the expected output. I repeat again, when the actual output exceeds the expected output, it is abnormal gain. So what is abnormal gain, guys? What is abnormal gain? When the actual output, it is there in the PPT also. I request you guys to please refer the PPT what I have provided. When talking about abnormal gain, when the actual output exceeds the expected output, it is abnormal gain. When actual output exceeds expected output, this is abnormal gain. So let's say I made an input of 10,000 units. It was estimated well in advance that 10% of the inputs will be the normal loss. It means what? That my expected output was how much? $9,000 units. My expected output was 9,000 units. It means what? 10,000 unit was my input, 10% was my normal loss. So my expected output was of 9,000 units. When the actual figures were out, my actual output was, let's say, 9,200. That is much more than what I expected. So it means what? 200 units is what? My abnormal. So when talking about abnormal gain, what is abnormal gain? When the actual output exceeds the expected output, it is abnormal gain. Now, why it? I mean, ये क्यों होता है? What's the reason behind it? It may be due to proper, lack of proper estimation. I mean, there may be due to improper estimation, or it may be due to over efficiency of worker or improvement in the production process. So very simple, guys. When the actual output exceeds the expected output, it is abnormal gain. It may be due to wrong estimation, or it may be due to efficiency of workers, or it may be due to improvement of production process. When talking about the treatment of abnormal gain, it is shown in debit side of process account, and thereafter transfer to costing payable. When talking about the value of abnormal gain, it will be equal to the value of good units. जैसे abnormal loss से cost inflate नहीं होता, वैसे ही abnormal gain से cost reduce नहीं होता. Very simple. जैसे abnormal loss से cost increase नहीं होता, abnormal gain से cost decrease नहीं होता. The cost will remain same, but yes, when talking about normal loss, yes, the value of abnormal loss is absorbed by good units. So it is shown in the debit side of process account and thereafter transferred to costing P&L. Further, the value of abnormal gain will be equal to the value of good units. Those who have any queries regarding the concept of abnormal gain, you guys can ask me. It's very easy. No worries, Tanishka. Thank you so much, my dear. So let's take a quick recap what we have discussed when talking about abnormal gain. When the actual production exceeds the expected production, it is abnormal gain. It may be due to why, it may be due to efficiency of worker, or it may be due to improvisation in the production process. Apart from this, it may be due to wrong estimation also sometimes. When talking about the treatment, very simple, the value of abnormal gain will be equal to the value of good units. The product cost will not be reduced. So the abnormal gain will be transferred to the debit side of process account and thereafter it will be transferred to costing P&L account. So let's proceed further. Those who want to copy this explanation can please copy. These figures will help you to recollect the things while revising for the exams. So I request you to copy at least this example. Rest all the theory part I have given in the notes itself. So input is 10,000, normal loss is 10% of input. It means my expected output is 9,000. But when the actual figures were out, my actual output was 9,200. It means what? 200 units is what? My abnormal gain. So just giving you 2 minutes time. Those who want to copy can please copy. Yes, it is Mantanjali. Yes, Nidhi. The cost per unit will be calculated in a similar way in all the question. That is the total cost minus the scrap value realized on sale of normal loss divided by my expected production. When talking about expected production, it is input minus normal loss. Yes, Jayanti, approximate answers are also correct. Yes, Isha Jaiswal. Mr. Rupesh, the costing gets over when the product is manufactured. When talking about the selling part and sales return part, it will form part of financial accounts, it will not form part of cost accounts, my dear. Sujal Agarwal, we do write the scrap value of abnormal loss, but not in process account because we have to account the total value. It includes the value of scrap as well as the extra loss. The bifurcation will be done in the abnormal loss account. So let's discuss the same question number 3 of the material what I have provided. The similar question is there in the material also. Shweta Jain, I have no idea about how it works, so I don't know. I mean, you have to inquire in ICAI for the same. So let's start, guys. Let's prepare process account. So to material, 5,000 units, 40,000. To wages, 30,000. To manufacturing overhead, 27,000. By normal loss, 250 units. And the scrap value realized is given in the question, that is rupees 500. Now output is given, that is the output that is transferred to the next process, that is process second is 4850. Now guys, we were expecting an output of how much? 5,000 minus 250, that is 4750 units. However, our actual output was how much? Much more than 4750, that is 100 units more than 4750, that is 4850. It means what? 100 unit is the extra unit. So this is what? The abnormal gain. We can also say, guys, that abnormal loss is the saving, abnormal gain, sorry. We can also say, guys, abnormal gain is the saving in the normal loss. So anyways, I'll be discussing the normal loss and abnormal gain account also. So now, what will be the value of these two? Very simple. As far as the calculation of value of good units is concerned, the process will remain same, that is 97,000 minus the 500 minus my expected production, that is 4750. Always I do repeat, this is always calculated on expected production. When talking about expected production, it is inputs minus normal loss. So we will calculate the total value. 203. The value will be the same as in this last question. So this will be 2032. Yes, Shivam Singh, we can say it is a more or less like a saving in normal loss. There is no balancing figure, my dear. And do make a note of it, Nidhi Parikh, a serious note of it, that there is no balancing figure in process account. You have to simply calculate the figures. When talking about this value, this is 4850 into 20.316. When talking about this value, this is 100 into 20.316. There is no balancing figure in process account. Let's discuss normal loss and abnormal gain account also. When talking about normal loss account, units and amount, units and amount. So normal loss is 250 and 500. So to process account, 250 and 500. Now, guys, very important, guys. Are these 250 units actually scrapped in the market? No, because even though we have estimated a normal loss of 250, but when talking about the amount that is actually we are getting in the market is how much? Sorry, the units that are actually sold in the market is how much? Only 150 units. The balance 100 units represents the abnormal gain. So we will transfer by abnormal gain 100 units, the proportionate scrap value, and only the balance units are sold in the market, that is remaining units, that is 150 units by bank. 150 into 2, 300. As well said, abnormal gain is more or less like saving in the normal loss. So here in this case, when talking about the actual units that are sold in the market, only 150 units are sold in the market. Why? Because see, there was an input of how much? 5,000 units. There was an output of how much? 4,850 units. It means when talking about the actual units that are sold in the market, it is only 150 units that are sold in the market. So when talking about abnormal gain account, abnormal gain account by process account, that is 100 and 2032. Abnormal gain 2, abnormal gain 100 and 200. So it will be adjusted against normal loss, and the balance amount is to be transferred to costing P&L, that is 1832. So this is how the normal loss and abnormal gain account is prepared. If you guys have any doubts, you guys can ask me. Waiting for your queries, guys. Yogita Kuwar. Thank you so much, Yogita. Very good, Mantanjali. Ritika Verma, as far as my opinion is concerned, the sessions that are provided by ICAI are more than sufficient. But whatever the part that is left out, we'll try to cover in the query session. So don't worry, Ritika. So guys, normal loss, abnormal gain in this question. If you guys have any doubts, waiting for your queries, my dear. Giving you last 3 more minutes. Whatever the queries in this session you have, you guys can ask me. I have discussed what is process costing. It's a method of costing used by the companies wherein the raw material has to pass through various processes before being converted into final product. Thereafter, we discussed normal loss, wherein thereafter we discussed abnormal loss and abnormal gain. So whatever the queries you have, you guys can ask me. Shivam Duria, when talking about abnormal gain, it is nothing but saving in normal loss, or we can say when the actual output exceeds the expected output, it is abnormal gain. When talking about the treatment, it is shown on the debit side of process account. Further, it is transferred to costing P&L. The value of abnormal gain will be equal to the value of good units. So in this process account, there is an abnormal gain of 100 units. So the value as calculated, that is 20.316 into 100. So this is how we got the value of abnormal gain. When talking about the loss of abnormal gain account, very simple, my dear. Abnormal gain, that is by process account, 100 units, 2032 is the value. Now this amount is transferred from normal loss account, wherein The total normal loss is of 250 units and the total estimated scrap value is 500. But when talking about the actual units that are sold in the market, it will be only 150. The balance 100 units is abnormal gain. So of this 150 units, the scrap value realized is 300. So balance will be 100 abnormal gain and 200 rupees will be the scrap value. This is transferred to abnormal gain account and the balance that is left out is transferred to costing P&L. I have not calculated the scrap value. I have just prepared the normal loss account. We can say abnormal, we can interchangeably use this language that abnormal gain is more or less saving in the normal loss. And when talking about why I have taken 100 and 200, because when talking about the actual units that are sold in the market, it is only 150 units that are sold in the market. Sorry, my mistake. Vikas Bansal, when talking about abnormal loss or abnormal gain, if in a particular clip, I'll discuss this part separately. Again, it will create lots of confusion. Yes, Tanishka, I have corrected it. Thank you so much. The scrap value will be 0. If they are not sold in the market, the scrap value will be 0. Further, it will not be transferred to costing P&L account, but yes, the product cost will be inflated, Yogita. Thank you so much, Ankit Gupta, for the compliment. Thank you so much, Ayush. I have made the necessary correction. So guys, we are done for today. Herein we discuss normal loss, and abnormal gain. I request you to please revise it thoroughly. From the next session, I'll be discussing many questions wherein there will be abnormal loss also, abnormal gain also. So in the meanwhile, you have 1 day time. So revise what I have discussed till now. The basic concepts, the basics of process costing is all over. Now we have to start with the full-fledged practical question. So I'll be discussing one full-fledged practical question. If there is abnormal loss in a particular process and in other process there is an abnormal gain. So how to account the same? So it's just like we'll be combining all what we have discussed in this session. In the next session, thereafter we'll start with, there are 2 more parts of this chapter that is more or less related to inter-process profit and equivalent number of units. So we have sufficient time for this chapter. So don't worry guys, I'll be discussing bulk of practical questions in the coming session for this process costing. So I request you guys to please revise. There is no homework for you today. The only homework is you have to revise what I have discussed till now. So in the next session, at the initial part, I'll be asking you a few questions on abnormal loss and abnormal gain. And then I will start with the full-fledged questions. So thank you so much guys for participating in the session and posting all your queries. I tried my level best to cover all the queries. If anything is left out, you guys can please ask me in the next session also. So thank you so much, guys. Have a great day. Enjoy your Monday.
Thank you, Mr. Vipin, and thank you all the students.